So what drew you to start growing crystals on things?
Yeah, well, so I had spent a lot of my time in college exploring caves and being outside. And the more time I would spend underground, crawling through, caverns and crevasses, I would find these minerals and these formations that inspired me. And I thought, how could I bring this delicate art form or this delicate sculptural form into my artistic practice? And so that kind of took the form of synthesizing crystals in a lab setting. And with my chemistry background, growing crystals was easy for me. But I was always thinking, how can I take that practice into the outside of the realm of science and scientific observation and utilize it for creative purposes? So it all kind of began literally crawling through caves. Yeah, a lot of my work does combine the sort of raw, messy practice of art, that chaotic energy, and then the refined, pristine, accurate practice of science. I think whenever you take any standard human that you haven't completely just scraped away their curiosity, naturally what they will explore and what they will do will be the combination between creative endeavors and scientific observation of the world around us. I think science and art belong together when you have an unfiltered human and an unfiltered human mind that is just ripe with childlike curiosity. It's literally just how each of us as an individual interacts with the natural world around us. That is where you find that sort of hybrid between science and art. So to grow the crystals I grow, I start with a salt. So salt, in terms of chemistry, is an ionic bond between a metal and a non-metal. So think of like table salt, sodium chloride, or think of any of these like the green crystals, the iron ammonium sulfate. You take that compound and you put it in boiling water, you dissolve it, you break that bond, separating those two components into ions. Over the course of a couple of weeks, sometimes a couple of days, the water in the solution will evaporate, leaving just the ions that will reform those bonds. And those will begin to form a network that attract other molecules, and that's where you start to get your crystalline structure. The crystals are just how those molecules form that network naturally in a pure, controlled setting. All I do is I take, say, bones, insects, any sort of remain, or any object really, and I put them in between the molecules. So when they do reform, they'll latch on to whatever surface that they'll naturally gravitate toward, and then they'll start to grow and crystallize around the object. There's really no special relationship between, say, a cicada and the crystals. It's just the cicadas are just the surface on which the crystals will naturally form. And as for the decomposition and preservation, I mean, these crystals will remain as long as they're, kept out of direct light, kept away from moisture, like you would any other piece of artwork. And in some ways, the minerals actually help preserve and help make the remains more sturdy as they mineralize over it.
I want you to tell me how you felt the first time you did it. The first time you grew crystals.
It was pretty freaking magical. I mean, I already knew how to grow crystals. I understood crystal science and crystallography, but the first time I took a cicada shell and I submerged it in a solution of copper sulfate in my college house in a mason jar. And that next morning I woke up and I was like, I wonder if anything happened. And I had to put gloves on and reach in the jar, and I pulled out the cicada shell, and crystals had nucleated inside of the shell and had grown outward, bursting out of the back of the cicada shell. It was the most magical item I'd ever seen. And there's a part of me that felt like I didn't feel like I made art. I don't know what I made because I wasn't in control. I had no idea this would be the outcome. I didn't really know what to visualize. So the first time I pulled it out, it was just like I uncovered or unearthed some sort of like ancient treasure or like gem. I don't know. It just blew my mind and like sparked a whole career of science, art, and creativity. It just like lit my imagination on fire. Good God. So many projects. I have like 8 things going. One of the things I'm working on is synthesizing opals and growing opals in my lab. And I have a recipe that I fine-tuned where I can grow opals in about 5 days. So my next project is I want to make some of the world's first opalized insects and opalized flowers and things like that. Really just cover everything in opal. I'm also working toward building a conservatory here in Tulsa where I can grow crazy plants and all my hybrids and just experiment and have sort of a center where people can come see my mad science happen and my art happen, and then it's open to the public. Those are two of my current things. I have some really killer book deals that are happening I can't talk too much about, and a big art installation I'm going to be doing in Tulsa next spring that is going to be called The Garden of the Ghosts. So I have some really exciting, wild, fantasy level things I'm working on that I really want to talk more about, but I can't talk too much about some of those.